The Bernina 790 does an amazing assortment of decorative stitches, and we're kind of talking about applique right now. Now we just finished a video about talking about applique, like a satin stitch applique, and there is an applique stitch built in to the machine in the quilting menu, but also in the quilting menu is our blanket stitches. Now if this inspires you right here, we are talking about our Bernina Stitching Cosmos online course that takes your machine from zero to hero with everything sewing. That's 25 different sewing techniques and 18 different presser feet. Check that out in the links below this YouTube video. But I'm going to give you some tips right now on doing blanket stitch applique. So we are going to start off by using an open toe foot. So I've already selected foot 20C, more just so I don't forget, and the machine reminds me I need to select that. Our quilting menu right here is where all those great stitches hang out. And if you have taken the time to stitch out your stitch book, again, there's a link below this YouTube video where you can learn how to stitch the ultimate stitch book and learn what all these stitches actually are. We were just doing that satin stitch I mentioned. It's a built-in stitch on page 3, 1354, and though back here, 1329 and 1330 are blanket stitches for applique. So not as they don't cover as much as a satin stitch, but a lot of people like this look. So if you're looking for the traditional one, choose the first one. But let's just take a peek right here. Notice that the stitch is in the center needle position. This is a trick I tell all my students. Number one, I like to use the inside of my right toe of the open toe foot as a guide. So you can use your needle position, move the whole stitch all the way over to the far right, and then I'm going to show you how I guide my stitch. If you want it a little bigger or a little longer, again, the size you see on screen is the size you're going to get. So if I do push clear, I'll go back to my normal settings, but also with the needle position in the center. I am going to put that back, and let's just pretend that that is the ultimate setting, which it is for me. So I am going to touch the eye and save that. As I save that feature, that means that every time I turn the machine on, this stitch comes up the way I like to sew it. So you can override the default settings of every single stitch in this machine, so you're not stuck on just what the engineers think you should stitch it on. Maybe you wanted it always a little bit wider and a little longer. That's like your ultimate setting, for example. Again, you can come in here, save that, and that's also the setting that it will bring it back to on your machine when you sit down to sew. So the difference between these two stitches is that 1330 is a triple version of this stitch. Even starts off a little bit wider and a little longer. Same thing, you are more than welcome to do what I just taught you. Move that needle position all the way over and save it as that favorite setting. Now, do you remember whatever we change, it remembers that stitch? So as I go back to showing you what we had set earlier for the 1329 original blanket stitch, and I say original because it's just one stitch out and one stitch forward, one stitch out, one stitch forward. I also have it set so when I stop with the needle down, and here I'll just kind of remind you where that is in the settings, that the foot will hover. So we've gone into the straight and zigzag, touch the hand and the button. That goes to the place where we can set features for the needle down option. And right now, when the needle stops down, the foot is going to pop up for a quick little pivot. I love that for applique. But I often come in here and turn it off when I don't want that foot to lift. So your preference, that's probably the one feature I'm always in here turning on when I want it, turn it off when I don't want it. So let's go down to the machine and let's do a little applique. One thing you always want is some stabilizer underneath your base fabric. So today it's just a little tearaway just to keep these stitches from wrinkling the fabric. So as I start, do you notice where the needle is? And it matches up with the white dot at the top of the stitch on your screen. So I know that when I start, that needle is going to come down right there, which allows me to line up really close to the edge of the foot and the fabric. So as I start, we're going to start with those little locking stitches. And this is the rhythm that you're going to start to learn. Now, I did set that fairly long and large, but that's okay. This will work. And also, this is not actually glued down, so we're just going to kind of follow along. You want the stitches that come straight towards you to land on your base fabric, and then the bite to stay perpendicular to the edge. So I mentioned that the foot will kind of hover. See how it's loose now? So if I was turning a corner and gently moving around a curve, that is going to make it so I don't have to stop and push any buttons, and my hands can stay right there on the fabric. So I'm going to just even move this a little bit narrower and shorter, just to kind of show the difference here. And we'll just stitch right down to a corner, and I'll show you how I like to turn. So right now I have to figure out, do I take one more stitch? Do I take two more stitches? Do I go forward one more? And so forth. So I can actually get one more stitch. There we go. Then I'll turn. And it's going to jump in and back and then forward and around. So that's just sometimes a little practice of the rhythm of the stitch. Now we did talk about that other stitch, 1330. It currently is still sitting in the other needle position that I saved. So watch the difference. Forward, back, forward, in, out. So that is going to give you the look of a much heavier stitch. Also, it's going to take you a little longer to stitch it out. So that's just part of learning when to pick this stitch, when it's worth having that heavier stitch there. Remember, you can always touch the locking stitch. Looks like a little picture of a pretzel on the front of your machine. That will lock it at any given time, and then you can cut the thread. Have those threads pulled to the back side immediately, and you're set. So let's just take a look at the two different stitches. I started a little wider, I made a little narrower, turned the corner, and then switched to the heavier stitch. So again, great way of learning applique. Of course, in our Bernina Stitching Cosmos online course, we do teach you all the different stitches you can use for applique, because so many people get stuck in the satin stitch, blanket stitch rut, and I'm one to go looking through the machine and find new stitches that can totally be used for applique. So I hope you check out the 10 free videos that we have below that you can check out on that course, and check out the other videos that we have done on the quilting menu and what some of these other stitches can actually do.